Feel like you've aged out of parenthood? Are you finally ready to be a mother, but the alarm on your biological clock has been going off for 15 years? The good news, life can change in an instant. Trust me, I should know. And remember, don't call me ma'am, call me mom. Hey everyone, welcome to Don't Call Me Ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. You can call me mom though. Don't call me ma'am, call me mom. Because these are special episodes where I'm documenting my journey to motherhood and everything I went through along the way. For most of you know that I became an overnight mom in my late 40s, and I'm very happy about that. But a lot of people have kids earlier than I do, usually in their 30s, and some have them in their 20s, which to me is like bonkers. But my next guest, I'm very excited to have her here because she did that. She did the crazy thing. She was like, I'm super young and I'm just gonna pop out some kids. So start clapping right now. Pull over to the side of the road if you're listening in your car. Start clapping right now for Jordan. Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this because it's definitely a trend where women are having kids later in life, for sure. Maybe not as late as me, per se, but I definitely have at least 3 friends of mine that are within a year of how old I am. So but back when I was young, someone my age would be a grandmother, for sure. Like nobody would think, you can have a kid in your late 40s. And by the way, I adopted my daughter, but my 2 friends had their own biological children.
They say 40 is the new 35. It's not. Geriatric pregnancy starts at 35, but
it's yes, exactly. I know they're saying that, but they also say like 40 is the new 20 and 50 is the new 30, and it's like
I love it.
I wish I could like tell my plastic surgeon like, yes, can you give me that face? Okay, so tell me about your journey, and did you always want to have kids young? What was your what was your thought process when this was happening?
So I think in terms of LA, I'm an outlier in many ways because I also I didn't grow up here in LA.
Okay.
I grew up in Georgia.
Okay.
And because of that, a lot of my peers were having children young.
Right.
I got started kind of late compared to a lot of...
When you say young, like right out of college?
Right out of college or right out of high school if they didn't go the college route.
Now, let me just ask you a question, because this was definitely not a discussion. And I do know 2 people that I went to high school with that either maybe a year or 2 out of high school, but most of them right out of college. It was never a discussion. Remember, I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, that we were like, yeah, let's have kids right away. In fact, we were the opposite. Like, let's travel the world, let's do that. So in your high school, were people talking about having kids?
Yeah, I think that just that lifestyle there is more of starting a family as the goal, as opposed to like doing your journey. Right. It was like, I'm going to find my husband, I'm going to have children. There's also probably a little bit of the religious aspect to it, which I wasn't a part of either. Right. So when I moved here to LA, I want to say 20. Yeah, I was 23. Right. I had just graduated from college. Right. Moved here on a whim because I had family that lived here at the time. And I got pregnant my first year here.
On purpose?
No.
Okay, there you go. That happens.
Which I think is probably, if we're going to say the vast majority of younger pregnancies are not planned.
Right. But it's funny that you said, and that's very funny that you said, that people, where you grew up in Georgia were like, their idea of, what adulting was going to be like was like, meet that person, start a family instead of going on their journey, which I feel like you can do both.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? But
a lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people do. And by the way, there are pros and cons to having kids younger and having kids later, for sure. I got to go on my journey without the responsibility. I got to travel the world. I got to like have a lot of fun. I got to party without having, what I mean? Well, my body could still handle alcohol. Yeah. Like I wouldn't be able to, like my friends now whose kids are grown and they're trying to go out. I mean, you know what I mean? They're like, I can't party the way I used to.
They might have more time now, but they're not recovering. We're not bouncing back.
No, we're definitely not bouncing back. Okay, so you come out here
at
23 and you get pregnant.
Yes. And I think that even though my mindset being from the South wasn't the same as theirs.
Right.
Coming here to LA and still having that Southern mindset probably encouraged me, or at least had some kind of impact on whether or not I decided to continue my pregnancy.
Right, exactly. Now, were you the baby's daddy? Were you with him? Were you guys dating? Was it
When I found out I was pregnant, we were broken up.
Best way to get him back, ladies.
Yeah, no, that was, oof, if I could go back in time.
Yeah, what was that conversation like?
I was crying. I found out like the weekend before my birthday, which is actually like, it's almost the weekend that it is now. Like looking back 9 years ago, it was pretty close to now.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. And
also she was probably like, I can't get wasted now.
Yeah, I was like, darn it, there go my plan. I ended up going to Dave and Buster's. So. But anyways, so yeah, I went through in my mind about what the possibilities were. Right. I considered all my options.
Of course you did. Of course. And by the way, unless you do come from a religious background, I mean, I honestly believe even if you are like 100%, pro-life, there has to be a moment. You're lying to yourself if there isn't a moment that thinks, maybe I should do something, or maybe God will do something, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, It just is. Our minds are just sort of wired that way to go through every possibility if it's something that's like that. If you're obviously planning to have a pregnancy, you're not. But if it comes out of the blue and you're not ready, you know what I mean? Mentally, emotionally, financially,
all of the above.
All of the above. You know what I mean? Okay, so did you immediately tell him? Did you immediately tell your parents? What did you do?
I immediately told him. I called him and said, we need to talk. I left work and I think I picked him up in a mall parking lot because he was living with his brother at the time. And I was in denial. I was in such denial that even though I had peed on his stick and it said I was pregnant, that I was like, I want to go. I need to be sure.
Right.
And I wanted a blood test.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I have like an inhospitable uterus. And in the past, like I just caught it at the right moment. But like tomorrow I won't be pregnant anymore.
No, of course not.
Because I had gone a long time without getting pregnant, not being the smartest. So
I was a slut too, everyone.
But that ends eventually.
I mean, you know how many times women do this thing where we like meet a guy and then like we bring them home or they bring us home or whatever. And we're like, wrap it up, condom. We have sex. But in the morning we go to have sex again and we're like, no, I know you. It's fine. And then we don't use a condom. Like, what is that mentality?
I had the mentality, I shouldn't be saying this, but I had the mentality of if I knew I was going to go out and there was an opportunity that might come up, I was like, I'm just not going to like groom in the ways that I would want to groom if I knew I was going to be with someone, because then it'll stop me.
It will, but it won't.
Didn't.
I've definitely I've taken like a beer cap and like used it as a razor to be like, clean it up. And by the way, I don't think any guy is like, oh, what a mess down there. I'm not going down. They're going down. They don't care. It's only in our minds. And we think it's going to stop us. And then like one drink and we're like, whatever. It's the natural look. People in Australia are just like, let it all grow. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I forgot where I was.
All right, so you were in a mall parking lot.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember like exactly like what entrance you were at? Were you at like a Bloomingdale's entrance or the food court entrance?
I can see it in my mind, but I don't remember the exact.
Okay, but you remember. Okay.
Yeah, and then I picked him up and we went to a Planned Parenthood, actually.
Oh.
And I told them I wanted to get the test done. I wanted a blood test. Right. And I was very specific in that. And they said, okay, we're going to give you a urine test first and then we'll talk. And I did the urine test and they're like, says you're pregnant. I'm like, yeah, I know. I just saw that. Mm-hmm. Can I get the blood test? And they're like, no, dude, you're pregnant. Like, there's nothing to be done. Like, it's happening.
Can I get a psychic in here? My like, astrologer. Like,
are you sure, though?
And the blood test? Because, like, I want to make sure everybody,
So then I believed it. I did take a pregnancy test every day for, like, a solid month, I want to say. It was a lot of, it was just denial of, like, how could this be? And there was a lot of back and forth in my head. And I think I had an experience that was different for me in terms of whether or not I wanted to move forward with having a baby. First off, like you were saying, are you ready? But in my mindset, I was like, who's ever ready?
Who's ready? Nobody's ready.
And I thought of my best friend at the time who just had her first child after loss, after trying for years. Right. And, you know, I'm about to be 35. She's 35 already, and she just had her first baby, which is a normal age now. Yeah. But I always thought, like, what if you wait until you're ready?
Right.
And then it doesn't happen.
And that happens to a lot of women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yeah, this isn't the best time, but it's also not the worst time.
No, of course.
There could be worse.
Of course there could be worse.
Yeah. So I wasn't with the dad. We did end up working it out for a solid 8 years, which resulted in a second child as well.
Oh, okay.
But
all right.
We're not together anymore, but yeah, it did. He was around for the beginning.
Right.
And yeah, that's what like helped with my decision. And I also had like a scare where very, very early on where I wasn't sure that I was told I was having a spontaneous abortion, which is just I guess, medical for miscarriage. That's what they call a miscarriage.
Like what spontaneous abortion?
That's exactly what my hospital paperwork said.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was like, it's a what? So, and they said, you're probably miscarrying. And I had that moment where I was like, all right, like, it's me and you, kid. Like, if it works, it works.
Right.
If you're going to decide to push through this, whatever's going on, then I'll see it through too.
Right.
And we did.
Oh, that's actually great. That's really great. So, all right. So let's cut to, you give birth. Mm-hmm. Your family's all on board. Everybody's all on board.
I waited a bit to tell my dad. I wouldn't say on board per se. They got on board. The great thing about giving birth the first time is I was still on my parents' insurance. So
that's how young she was, people. She was still on her parents' insurance. Oh my God.
So amazing. I had my first daughter at Cedars-Sinai. She's like, her birth certificate says Beverly Hills.
And her second child in a car.
Pretty much. Wasn't that
in a drive-thru.
A few steps up from that. But yeah, so that was an interesting experience too. But I did go through like having to tell family.
Right.
And I remember most of them were supportive.
Right.
And sometimes too when they're like, oh, wow, congrats. Right. That in the back of their mind, I think it's more accepted now to be like, are we happy about it?
Right.
Because we can just address it.
Yes.
Back then it was kind of like everyone was saying like happy for you, but who knew how really they were thinking behind closed doors. I did have...
What were your friends like? Your friends that were out partying. They were like, let's go, New Year's Eve. Super Bowl, if it was around this time. I mean, all of these things, you know what I mean? Into the spring, St. Patty's Day. I mean, what were your friends like?
I think the ones that didn't have kids saw it as like a novel experience. Like I was missing out, and I definitely did miss out on a lot of things I would have done.
Right.
Before, especially before being pregnant. Like I still went to some of the events. I remember pregnant, I went to like a drinking challenge and I just didn't drink, but nobody knew I was pregnant. I was like, I'm still in my 20s, like I'll go.
Right.
It was like a flip cup challenge for one of my cousins. But anyways, they saw it as novel though. Like I had people like, I want to throw you a baby shower. I want to buy baby clothes. It's like a lot of women have it in their mind of what they think it's going to be like.
Right.
And they're like, oh, here it is. I want to be a part of this.
Right.
But that only lasts so long.
Of course.
And then the reality of it hits everyone, including me. And it's like, I can't do the things I wanted to do or I used to do.
Right. Oh my God, does your life change? And I think what's interesting about having a child later in life is, and every woman goes through this, and I think it's a version of postpartum, whether you're really, going through the hormonal part of the postpartum where you're on that side of the spectrum where it's just like you can't get out of bed, and I know a lot of women that do had that happened. Mm-hmm. Compared to me, that I definitely went through a depressive state, like a postpartum adoptive state, and it's because your old life is gone
forever.
You have to mourn the death of your old life, and that's what it is. It is forever gone and changed, and obviously this is an amazing chapter of your life that's unfolding in front of you, but you have to say goodbye to a part of you that you've known. For you, it was 24 years. For me, it was 48 years. Yeah. That's a life. That's a huge lifetime that I had to be like, bye-bye. And it was devastating for me. It was really hard. I mean, I'm sure it's hard at either age.
I can't imagine though, because I was young enough that I didn't really have that much under my belt.
Right, you didn't. As an adult, you didn't. But you went from, what's interesting though for you, that's a little bit on the other side, is you had someone taking care of you for 18 years. Then for 6 years, you were on your own taking care of yourself. But now you have to take care of someone. Like you really didn't have a lot of time to just be on your own, exist and make the mistakes and have all the fun and pay for it the next morning, or pick up and go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? While you were able to do that, all of a sudden now you were responsible for another life.
Yeah.
What was that like when I know what it was like for me, but as someone who was a lot younger than me, what was that? I mean, what was going through your mind?
I think at the time I chalked it up a lot to hormones, because I did go through like a really big, like teary episodes, and I'm not a crier.
Right.
But it was really hard to think of the community I'd built in LA, especially, was like a bar scene.
Right.
Like it was like the neighborhood bar, and none of my family out here was anywhere near having children. And they weren't super they thought it was kind of crazy that I was doing it because they weren't from Georgia.
Right.
And so I did go through like a big mourning period, of trying to figure out what this life was going to look like and how I could maintain like, I knew in time that I was going to see this as like, oh, this is giving my life a new meaning.
Right.
But that doesn't happen immediately.
No.
And I tell my friends that have babies that all the time. I'm like, don't feel guilty. You will. Doesn't matter no matter how many people tell you not to, you will. But the guilt of like not feeling incredibly excited is almost worse than just the feeling of like, oh my gosh, like this crushing blow of what does life look like now?
Yeah.
And what will it always look like? And I had really bad postpartum anxiety too.
Oh, wow.
Especially being that young and I didn't have any support at all out here.
Yeah. What kind of anxiety did you have? I mean,
like I would hear the baby crying if I got in the shower. And it wouldn't be crying. Right. Not like I'm hearing voices, but like it was just a constant state of, is she breathing? Is she that? Is she this? Like, and it continued for a while actually. But luckily it didn't happen as bad the second time around. Right. I don't know how if that had to do with age or experience or just the whole fuck it mentality of like, I know she's going to live. I don't need to worry if she's only getting breast milk for the first 6 months.
I think when you have a second, yes, I think, I mean, if I had a second, I would not have, I would be different, obviously, than I was with her with like, oh my God, the whole thing, because you hear, all of the stories about don't leave your kid unattended for even for a minute. Take her into the shower with you. Put her on a pillow. Don't leave her anywhere. You never know what can happen. And then I watched her when she was a month old flip over from she was on her little boppy thing and flip right over to the floor in the bathroom from the toilet, just face first. And you think you broke your baby. All of the things. Yeah. And then the intrusive thoughts. Nobody really talks about intrusive thoughts. They're crazy. Now, what's interesting about that is I never had intrusive thoughts. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about not like intrusive thoughts these are intrusive thoughts like I want to, jump off a mountain, or what if I just, I don't know, drove my car off a cliff. I'm talking about, which are intrusive thoughts for sure, but like horrific things that either could happen to you or your child, or, which more people do not talk about, a horrific thing that you could actually do to your child. I have definitely had those thoughts. They pop up into your brain, and because I'm creative, they're very creative. Like the baby's crying, you're like, what if I just drop her in the pool and walk away? Like it's a thought, and then you get sick to your stomach and you go through all the emotions and you wonder why your brain would even do that. And it's completely normal for anybody listening, by the way. But I never had any of those. I remember the first time I had an intrusive thought, I was probably late 30s, and I was just playing with my cat, and I was like, there were scissors right there. I was like, what if I just picked these up and stabbed him? For no reason. It's like,
but you could.
But I could. And it's a weird thing that all human beings...
It's acknowledging your use of free will.
Exactly.
And we do it in good ways, but sometimes your brain's just like,
like, what is the worst thing I could do right now? And then it plays out all of the things that would happen afterwards. But it's interesting, I didn't have that until later in life. I think when I just started having more anxiety about life. I can't even imagine being young and having all of those things on top of like, holy shit.
Yeah, and I think there's the added pressure as a younger parent of everyone's already looking at you to mess up or see to prove why it's a bad idea to be doing that at that age, which don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that make it a bad idea to have a child so young, but it does feel like you're kind of like climbing an uphill battle of trying to prove that you can do it. And prove to yourself, too. Of
course.
Because it's not, that's just not, I hadn't even had, a real job at that point.
Oh, my God, that's
I had been working, I had graduated college.
Right.
I had jobs, but I didn't have anything career-worthy.
Right.
I got really lucky and ended up getting, my current career started while I was pregnant.
Wow.
But I'm still working to try and make my nest egg.
Oh my God.
And my oldest is 9.
It's taken me forever. The great thing about that is that your 9-year-old gets to watch you figure it out. I think from my generation and your parents' generation, I mean, first of all, 24 was not young at all. You're right. It was either right where it should be or getting on the older side. Like my mom had my brother at 24 and me at 27. And it was totally the norm. No one 30 years ago would have looked at you and expect you to mess up because you were young. It would just be the norm, you know what I mean, of what everybody's doing. But I just watched my mom sit in a career that she hated. Mm-hmm. My dad was the one who basically left an industry that he was trained in and took he took the business over from his father, but then he eventually was like, I don't want to do this, right around the time that, my parents got divorced. So he was definitely going through a lot of changes. But he definitely showed me that you don't have to stay in a situation that's miserable, and you can still figure out what you want to do even as you get older.
Yeah, no matter how old you are.
No, it doesn't matter how old you are at all. I'm definitely a great example of that.
I think that's definitely an outlier too, though. And for me, growing up, my parents, they did go through some changes and stuff like that, but I think I always had it in my mind that adults have everything. They have it all figured out.
Of course.
They know what they're doing. They know when they're doing it, and they've seen it all. And my daughters are under no illusion that we have it all figured out. They see me figuring it out day in and day out. And it's become almost a team effort some of the times. And I'm like, because it's just us three, me and my two daughters. I'm like, this is, we got to figure out how we can make this work. If you want this way, then we have to do it that way. And I do obviously look at the benefits of it, and that they're going to see like the process of growing up, not just hear about it.
Right.
And growing into a parent. So I went to grad school when my youngest was 4, and my oldest was 4, and my youngest was born while I was in grad school.
Oh my God.
And then that was like 2019. So then the pandemic happened too. It was a lot.
That is a lot. So now you're a social worker now.
Yes.
So who are you dealing with? Who were the people that you deal with on a daily basis?
So I've been doing social work since I had my first daughter. So it's been like almost 10 years now. But I went back to school and got my master's in 2019, something along those lines. I got it in 2022. But so the population I work with is children who are abused or neglected. So right now, because I put in my time and I made a name and I was able to transfer positions to a position that's not on the line, they would call it, I do more family finding. So I'm kind of like a professional stalker. Like I'll find, and which is right up my alley as a woman. And if they have if a child has relatives that they haven't spoken to in years, or like an old neighbor that they want to reconnect with, I can help them find that person and try and maintain those kind of connections because they're placed out of home, which I understand the importance of. But prior to this, I was a case-carrying social worker. I had about 24 kids, all under 18, that I was responsible for, that were either in the home of a parent who had abused or neglected them, and we were trying to give them services to keep them home, or in out-of-home care, whether it be like a stranger foster home or a relative caregiver. And I would see their case through court, like make their recommendations, which in and of itself I can't imagine having done that job without children. And a lot of my coworkers do, because you just see things a lot differently as a parent. Things that you think as a non-parent are a big deal. As a parent, you're like, okay, I mean, let's be honest. Like, everybody does it.
Right. But also, though, I mean, you can also, like, if I wasn't a parent, I mean, and I was a nanny and a babysitter, but if I was doing that job and I was interacting with these children, I might not see subtle signs that you can definitely see being a parent. You know what I mean? I also, having said that, though, the emotional aspect of working with children that are in a household that's neglectful or abusive is got to be heartbreaking.
It's had its times. There's been I can like remember some of them as like a flashbulb memory of like, oh, that was one of my hardest days, where especially when I see my child in my client.
Right.
Like I went through one situation where a child was dealing with homelessness, which isn't neglect or abuse in and of itself.
Right.
We were trying to throw services at the
How
family.
old was the child?
At the time, she was 2, and so was my daughter.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
So they were in and out of hotels and here and there, and there were obviously other circumstances surrounding that.
Right.
But I saw her as like this cute little vibrant 2-year-old, like my daughter was, and the circumstances she was living in were so different. But she was still thriving.
Of course.
It was just so hard to see, and then. So I did my best. As a social worker, I treat all my clients the same.
Right.
As a human, there are situations you connect with more, and they weigh on you more.
Of course.
And more ideas will come up for those considered, like of how I can help this family.
Right.
So I did a lot to try and maintain that situation to keep that kiddo at home with the dad, and it didn't end up working out that way. Not because of homelessness, but because of a lot of other circumstances.
Right.
And having to myself personally remove that child from the parents. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And then I had to take her to a foster care placement that was a non-relative. And I had been seeing her for so long as her social worker.
Right.
And I had bonded with her because I talked to her
Right.
You automatically know how to deal with that 2-year-old. If you have a 2-year-old home.
Especially if you have a 2-year-old.
You're just going to treat them the same, And so we had bonded, and she did not want me to leave that foster home. And I ended up staying there until, I want to say, well after midnight. Just because it was so hard. She's screaming, crying, and I just wanted to get her settled. And
of course,
thinking of how, what that could be my child. Thinking of if my 2-year-old was in the exact same scenario, how would I want her to feel in those moments? And if she was leeching onto something.
How is she now? Do you know?
Because
everybody's probably like, oh my God, what happened to this poor girl?
I don't know for sure. I think she's doing okay. I'm sure she's doing okay because she's getting the services. I don't know if she's
still
home.
in the foster care system?
I don't know. My daughter's 5 now, so she would be about 5.
Right.
And I didn't keep her case when I transferred.
Right.
So I can't say for sure how she's doing.
Oh my God! If I see, that's the thing. I would have just taken her home with me.
It's hard sometimes.
I would have been like, "You're coming home with me, then. Like, you can just stay with me." You know what I mean? I just would have been so hard because when you're trying to leave your own child somewhere and they're screaming,
even if it's preschool, they're going to be safe there.
Right,
they're going to be well taken care of.
They're going to be fine and they're going to stop crying. But I can't even imagine. Yes, being young, having 2 young kids, and dealing with these really difficult situations and seeing all different types of families, and it's really hard. Now, having said that, I mean, I'm definitely not I'm not saying that anybody should ever abuse their children, but after you have a child, it
changes your mindset.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, how could this parent, even shake the baby? I mean, I have a joke about it, but do you know how many times I almost shook my baby? I shook her bassinet.
Yeah.
I was shaking it. I'm like, stop.
You get upset, yeah.
You get so upset. You don't know what to do. You're human and your body is just like, oh my God, I have to get this out. You know what I mean? So I get it. I hear these stories. And even when I lash out, for my daughter, at my daughter, just lash out in general because of something that's either going on that's out of my control, it's all a control issue, then I'm like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I need anger management. I need I just go down that rabbit hole. What's going on? Why am I acting like this? I mean, it's just, and by the way, I just know myself, and I don't know at your age if I would have even had as much control as I do over my emotions now at that young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was, I especially because my oldest, when I was the youngest having her, had really bad colic.
Oh, God.
I was bouncing up and down on a yoga ball all hours every night. I was losing my mind. She got to the point, and I was working at the time, she got to the point where if my nipple fell out of her mouth while we were sleeping, she was awake.
Right.
I was not sleeping, which I guess as being 20, I would think I was 25 at that time.
Right.
It's a little easier.
You definitely had
if that happened to me now, I'd be dead.
Oh my God.
The hollows in my eye, I can't even imagine. But at that point, I was barely sleeping. And I was still working and
that's
trying to get everything done.
That's the thing too about where I was in life. Now I know people are like, I'm not ready. And I think they mean that specifically financially because I was able to have extra child care.
Yeah.
Because I was single and I definitely needed it, but financially I was able to do that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to at 24 or 25, 100%. And you probably weren't. You probably had to go back to work. You had to work. You know what I mean? You weren't able to probably, I was able to have a night nurse 3 nights a week. And that was out of necessity. I definitely drained my savings for that, but I would do it again because I wouldn't have made it through. Yeah, I wouldn't have made it through. I was a much better parent.
You're a much better parent when your glass is full.
Right.
You cannot. And I constantly still deal with that to this day, of just trying to be the best parent I can and not feel bad about taking time for me.
Right, of course.
Because if I am drained, I'll tell my children I'm overwhelmed right now. Mommy is overwhelmed.
Right.
I need to breathe. Just give me a minute because I wasn't able to kind of get my nest egg started before.
Right.
Even though I do, I have a great job. I have my master's and but I live in LA.
Right.
And I'm single and I have 2 kids. I work extra jobs. I take care of another kid who's 3.
Wow.
3 days a week. And I used to, when I had a roommate with my kids, I used to drive for Uber when they were sleeping.
Yeah.
Like you just got to hustle to try and make it all work. And then when you finally do take a breath and like, oh, I just need some time to not be needed by anyone.
Oh my God, that's
like
the
just not have thing. Tugging on you.
Don't touch me. Don't do anything. When my daughter goes to school and I come home and my cats start meowing, I'm like, there is no more crying in this house. Nobody cries.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I cannot listen to one more person or one more thing cry in my house. I mean, I was a hustler too my entire life, and I still am now. But yeah, I would always work more than one job, whether I needed to or not. In the back of my mind, I was like, I need to like put some cash away. I always need to, and I always liked moving and doing things.
Yeah.
But I'm exhausted now. You know what I mean? Like I'll work as many jobs as I have to, and perform and teach and do all the things because I enjoy doing it. But also, it's like, I'm exhausted. Yeah. Like a child takes it all out of you.
They really do.
Let me ask you this question. What type, because now you're in this generation though of like the gentle parenting, like you're right in it. Like that was not how I was raised. How were you raised? How were your parents? Were they like helicopter parents? Did they do gentle parenting? What was it like?
They were neither. They were kind of in between. I think my parents did I think they did a great job. But I can see now as a parent, I think it's easier to blame them for their mistakes before you have a kid. And then you're like, oh God, you could have done so much worse.
Yes. Oh my God.
Like, I don't know how you dealt with that. But no, they had some kind of strict rules.
Right.
But in terms of, they had it figured out. I did see them as having everything figured out.
Right.
When I was 5, they bought the house that we lived in until they sold it last year.
Right.
So they had it for 30 years.
Right. Different time.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Different time, different state.
And Georgia. Yeah.
I was going to say different state.
Yeah. And I went to I was in a great school district. And so, yeah, they didn't do the gentle parenting. I didn't get hit. I remember the few times I was hit.
Yeah, me too.
And looking back, I deserved them.
Oh, 100%. I don't understand. Like, I was only hit a few times too, and I remember 70s, 80s when I was young 70s, and it was more like, I remember specifically one time that my mom went to spank me only because I started laughing because she was just a weak woman.
What are you going to do?
She was just a tiny little waif of a woman.
Yeah.
And she would and I was definitely a handful. And she went to spank my butt and put me in my room and I laughed, which only made her more angry. My brother and I laughed. She also put soap in my mouth.
I got that.
Did you get?
Yeah, I did get the soap one time for saying a bad word.
I think, yes, I was saying a bad word.
Now wash your mouth out.
I'm going to wash your mouth out. It's ridiculous and poisonous, but who cares? I remember she stuck it in there, and I think I went to kiss her or I licked her with the soap, and she was like, never again. And it was like ivory. It was like, what? Yeah, it was gross. Anyway, and my brother just my brother might have liked it. I don't know. But he didn't say anything. But I mean, when I went through all the phases of what is everybody, how do I don't even know what to do. You can't spank your child. When I was also, by the way, when I was young, not only could I be spanked by my parents, other parents could spank me.
Yeah.
If I was doing something wrong. And there was no, everybody was like, yeah, well, what did you do? I grew up in a great neighborhood. Everybody knew everyone. We would play in everyone's homes. And if Brandy's mom or Brandy's dad was like, nope, you can't do that, and gave me a spank. And I told my mom, she was like, well, what did you do? Yeah, there was not abuse call. You know what I mean? Teachers could discipline everything. So I think the first time I did spank my daughter, she deserved it 100%. And I really don't spank her, but if she's hit me across the face in a tantrum, I've spanked that hand. And
I've gotten the smack in the face. I got smacked in the face this morning.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm going to go talk about parenting.
Yes.
And I'm dragging my 5-year-old into school, and she's right in the face.
Oh, right in the face.
And I was school's not an option. You're going.
And they have incredible strength. It's ridiculous.
They want that reaction, though.
They want the reaction.
Right. I think for me, because I'm reactive in general too. I think for me, what I do is if I'm going to punish when I'm mad, it's going to be different. So I need to calm down first.
Right.
And same thing when my youngest was a baby, or my oldest was a baby, and she was dealing with the colic, and I'd be like, I need a minute. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. I remember reading, I think it was on Reddit, okay, baby can't fall off the floor. put her down on the floor. She's safe. If she's crying, it doesn't matter if you're holding her while she's crying or if she's on the floor while she's crying. She's still crying.
Right.
And just go breathe. Like, go take a few seconds to just get it together, because it's not, no one's getting, then they feed off your energy too.
Totally feed off your energy. You're very, very lucky. I can say this. See, now if I, again, had a child at 24, there would be no Reddit, there would be no Google, there would be no, like, nothing. And if I was having the moments that I had, and by the way, I went down all of the rabbit holes of, you know, Reddit and, you know, everything. I went down any kind of forum I could go down of, like, how to get your baby to stop crying. Can you survive on 2 days without sleep? Yeah. Like, what, you know what I mean? How to feed your baby with your non-dominant hand. I mean, literally, like, everything that your brain is like, what happens if, you know, even just adoption. I'm like, I have to give her back. I have to return the gifts. Like, all of the things, you know what I mean? Like, how badly would this scar up the child? Like, how badly will I scar my child? When do the memories really start forming in her brain?
Is she going to remember this
activity? She going to remember this moment? Like, all of that stuff. None of that. So, I mean, you're very lucky that you had that, but you're also really, that's pretty amazing that you were able to recognize it, A, even search for it, but B, be like, I need a minute. Because even I knew that I needed a minute, but it was a minute of me screaming and beating a stuffed animal in the other room, like, you know, and screaming in her face. It's really, really, really rough. And I think parents that don't talk about it because there's shame and a guilt, guilt attached to it, I think they're doing everyone a disservice, because we sit there and we think, are we the only ones that do that? Are we like monsters?
And then you have your own guilt that goes along with it. Oh my God,
so much guilt. You know what I mean? And I definitely finally came to a place where I'm like, I'm not gentle parenting. It's not who I am. Yeah. Like, everybody's like, you have to hold space for your child's emotion. Like, the whole house is her emotion. Like, what are you talking about?
Who's holding space for my emotion?
Exactly. She has the whole house. I have the mailbox. Like, you know what I mean? Not even probably the glove compartment of my car. The car is where I hold space for my emotions, where I cry in the car. Yeah. Have you ever cried in front of your girls and they're like, stop crying?
Actually, I cried in front of my girls for the first time this past week.
The first time?
And I realized that it was the second for my oldest. She saw me cry when my brother moved out of state. And she saw me cry twice in the past week, and I can tell that I didn't set her up for empathy very well because she didn't even acknowledge the fact that I was like hysterical crying, trying to get her ready for bed. She just like, and I told her later on, I was like, sweetie, if that happens again, like, you don't have to get into talking in detail. Just put your hand on the person's shoulder and say, do you want to talk about it? Hopefully they'll say no, but like, you gotta, like, you can't just not even, it was a lot. I talked to her therapist about it.
I mean, my daughter, she actually has always had a lot of empathy. I remember when she was little and I would drop her off at like daycare and another little girl was crying because she missed her mom. And my daughter would walk over to her and she would just, it's not like I taught her this. She would put her hand on her shoulder. She must have learned that at school. And then she would go to give them a hug. And it was really sweet. But like, we were having just a terrible moment. Yeah, probably before bed. She wanted a Band-Aid, decorative, of course. There's no boo-boo. No, she's got to have it on. It's got to have it on. And I was at that point where you're like laughing, crying. You're like, what's happening with my life? And I start crying. And she's like crying, and she's looking at me, she goes, stop crying! Stop crying! I'm like, that's not what you say when someomone's crying. Stop crying.
It's not gonna help.
Because trust me, I'm like, I don't say stop crying to you. I mean, I probably have. But I'm like looking at her like, no, I need to cry. Yeah. And she's like, stop crying! And I'm like, Mommy's frustrated. This is a big feeling. It's a big emotion. She's like, stop it! Stop it!
No more
You're not
emoting.
frustrated. Yeah, like, stop it. I'm like, I am. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And wow, you're really in that whole, like, with the kids and social work. You're really in it.
It's all of the above.
It's all of the above.
Every day's an adventure. Worth it, but an adventure.
Totally worth it. And you're doing such amazing work with all of these families and all of these kids. And hopefully you are at least creating some sort of security for them, because I think that's the biggest thing. When I think back on my childhood, I remember I have bits and pieces, like flashbulbs of like things that have happened, but the overall feeling I get whenever I think about my childhood was that I was safe. It was just safety. It was safety and love. That's all it was.
At the end of the day, we're going to feel like we're failing in every single way. Yes. But I know my kids have seen a lot seen me going through a lot of phases in life and had a lot of people come into their life and leave, like nannies, their dad. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I know that they are safe and that they feel safe and stable.
100%.
That's all I can do.
Really quick, just 2 more minutes. What is dating like for a mom of 35? The mom is 35 with 2 kids under 10. What's it like?
It's rough. It's really rough.
Because I'm assuming most of the guys you match with do not have kids.
So I tried that route. I tried the not kids route after their dad and I ended things like 3 or 4 years ago. My most recent did have a kid.
Okay.
And I think that that's going to be my go-to from now on.
All right, great.
I don't think I would date anyone else that
you need it, especially if there are schedules involved. You know what I mean? Do you have do you guys split custody?
No.
No, okay. So,
I'm the full-time parent, primary, everything. The guy that I was dating, he did split custody.
Oh, okay.
So that made it easier on that side of things. And our daughters ended up being best friends.
I mean, that's also a great thing.
Yeah. Which is great, but also terrible because what if it doesn't work out?
Right.
But dating is a whole, that's like 6 episodes worth, I'm sure.
We'll bring you back for that. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for coming
of course,
onto
thank
the
you
show
for
and
having
talking
me.
about absolutely. Guys, remember, don't call any woman ma'am. I don't care how old she is, how young she is, but you can call her mom. I'm Jodi Miller. Check me out next time. Thanks for tuning in to Don't Call Me Ma'am. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you never miss an episode. See you next time.